So thank you again to everyone for attending today's AT training webinar. Our topic today is Autistically Me, and we are very, very lucky to have the incredible Ellie Pettigrew with us today, who is one of our highly specialist speech and language therapists here at AT Therapy. Ellie is an amazing member of our team. She has an incredible clinical knowledge, but also she's a brilliant trainer, and I know that the AT Therapy team have learned a lot from her, and I'm sure that she'll leave you with lots of really interesting thoughts to take away with you today. Nikki Jones, I'm the one of the clinical managers here at AT Therapy and the AT training lead. Any questions that you do have, I know I've said it earlier, but please pop them in the chat box. I will be monitoring throughout today's webinar. The recording of today's webinar will be uploaded to AT Therapy's website and also our YouTube channel. And for anyone who has subscribed to today's webinar, you will receive a copy of this as an email within the next few days. So I'm going to hand over to Ellie now.
Thank you. Thank you for that intro. You're going to make me blush. Thanks so much. Sorry, bear with me, my slides are going a bit slow. So yeah, welcome to my kind of presentation about my experiences of being neurodivergent and yeah, my experiences of being autistic. I think one of the reasons I wanted to do this is just selfishly, it really helps me to self-reflect, and I find it very therapeutic myself. But in terms of if I can provide more understanding to one person, or kind of allow one person to reflect or reframe, take something away, that's the aim. That's why I like to do this. So I thought I'd start a little bit about me. So my name is Ellie. I am a speech language therapist, 28, and I didn't receive a formal diagnosis until September 2021. I realised that I was autistic when I was around 16 years old, so I started volunteering at a specialist setting when I was 16. And as part of that role, I received lots of training, and some of that training was around autism, and it just really, really resonated with me. They were describing some of the things, and I was like, oh, that is normal. That's what I do. Thinking that everyone did it, everyone thought the same, and it's at that point that I realised, kind of like, hang on a minute, something's going on here. But I didn't feel ready, or I didn't necessarily want a label at that point. My mum kind of pushed me a few times to go to the GP and get a referral. It caused a lot of arguments, but at that moment in my life, I did not want a label, a diagnosis. It wasn't until I started this job and found the change of that kind of transition from summer to September. So we provide input into schools, and that change in my diary was really difficult. So that would have been in around kind of 2019, September 2019, and that's when I went to the GP and said, like, look, I want to go down this route, just that I wanted to share my experiences with other people. And at that time, I felt like I needed that diagnosis to validate me and as a bit of kind of oomph behind what I was saying. But I do completely think self-identification is completely valid. It's just, for me, that's what I needed at that point in my life. Just a quick slide around kind of what is autism. So this is a quote that I got off the National Autistic Society website. So autism is a lifelong developmental disability which affects how people communicate, interact with the world around them. More than 1 in 100 people are on the autism spectrum, and there are around 700,000 autistic adults and children in the UK. That's the current kind of definition on their website. It's a definition that has changed, and I think as we learn more and more people kind of share their experiences, it'll probably change again. The main kind of areas of difference is around kind of our communication styles, our interaction styles. I find change particularly difficult, so I like to know what's happening, when, where, just all the questions around it. Repetitive behaviour and sensory needs. So in this presentation, I'm kind of going to go through my experiences from kind of early life to now, but there's so much that I could talk about, and I have been, like the last couple of weeks, I've been adding to this. So there's so much that I'm not going to have time to talk about as well. So there's little baby Ellie. So my early childhood, so this is a lot of things that my family have told me. So things like I would play with my ear, which is something that I still do. And when my auntie used to look after me, she would give me Calpol because she thought, oh, she's playing with her ear, it's earache. But that's something that I still do now when I think I do it as a calming kind of mechanism. So that is one of my stims. I was also a fussy eater as a child, to the extent where my parents were kind of healthcare visitors questioned my parents, I guess, on how they were looking after me because of weight gain, for example. However, when I went on to solid foods, so not that baby mush, I was a much better eater. And to this day, I still do not like mushy textures. So something like if we get takeout, my boyfriend likes to get a dal, and I'm just, it's too mushy, that texture for me. I don't like that texture. And again, this is something my mum said, that when she'd carry me, I would full on hang my head out of her arm and like to be kind of upside down. So again, potentially seeking that sensory input. And this is something that I remember doing as a child. So I remember lying at the top of my bed, kind of lengthways across my quilt, and I would roll up inside my quilt. And that was kind of my happy space. It gave me kind of deep pressure. It reduced kind of auditory and visual stimulation as well. So again, these are just some of the kind of sensory things that were happening for me as a child, and that I reflect on now. Interactions, I really struggled, even with family members. So like aunties and uncles would say hello to me, and I just would go silent, like could not get any words out. And yeah, didn't want cuddles, didn't want that interaction, particularly from uncles. So that's something else that has been consistent through my life. So as a child, if I needed to go to the doctors or the dentist, I would get really, really anxious about, is it going to be a male dentist or doctor? And that's just something that I've always been like, I don't know where I've got that from. Less so now, but as a child, I really remember getting anxiety around that. So again, just some pictures. I'm quite a visual person. When I was at uni, I remember learning about the potential kind of signs to look out for that somebody may be autistic, and I really remember them saying the play style and the not playing typically with toys. So I've included this image because that's how I played. I lined up my toys and took photographs of them. So that's, again, when I was at uni, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. So early childhood, I did attend a mainstream primary school. And I started a new mainstream primary school in year 2, and that was a very traumatic time. I think I'm still processing a lot of that trauma. I'll have memories and I'll think back to it and I'll think, oh, that's why I do that now. It really does. It's lifelong. That trauma is lifelong. It's always with you. So I struggled to make friends. I didn't know how to join in with my peers. I was very much a I'll watch from the sidelines, but I need a direct invitation from somebody to join in. I could never initiate, no matter how much I wanted to join in. I felt like I needed that that invitation to join in. So I found that really difficult. In the primary school that I was in, we had year 1 and year 2 classes. And then I can't remember how often this happened, but I felt like it happened all the time. They would split, so the classes were split in half. So it was half year 1, half year 2, half year 1, half year 2. And at certain points, they would put all the year 1s together, all the year 2s together. And I was in year 2, and we went to a particular teacher who previously was a high school teacher. I don't know if that kind of impacted on her teaching style, but she was scary. She picked on people, she shouted a lot, and I just went into fight or flight response constantly, that kind of situational selective mutism. So I was always seen as the quiet kid who just gets on with things. Yeah, there was a lot of consistent kind of being in that traumatic state, which is exhausting and terrifying. And especially when you're a child, you feel like you have no control and there's nothing that you can do about it. And I think for me, that's why I like to share my experiences, because if it can help anyone, that would be great. And I'm still learning to kind of advocate my own needs, as that's something that I've never really done before. My mum and dad will remember this. I would refuse to go to clubs, or I would say I wanted to join a club and then refuse to go to it, because I really wanted to join in like drama, dance, gymnastics, but I just really struggled with those environments. So I'd join for so long, and then I'd be like, right, no, I've had enough now. That was difficult. And again, linked to play, I think I was probably the bossy sibling. I am the eldest. I've got 2 brothers and a sister, but I think a lot of play was me directing them. You do this, you do that. No, you did it wrong. And a lot of the play was also imaginative play. So I guess we play a lot of shops, a lot of kind of, let's get the bus somewhere. And I think that might have been my way of learning about these situations. It's role play, essentially. So that helped. Yeah, I've already mentioned the memories of constant anxiety. So that's something that kind of continued throughout my education. So I went to high school. I then went to a college, which were very kind of, they pushed for everyone to apply for university. So at that time I was like, no, had no interest in going to university. And I volunteered where my mum worked with the therapy team. And that's where my love and kind of passion for speech and language therapy came from. So yeah, I did end up applying for university. Again, I've mentioned the kind of mutism in class. It's so difficult to explain. It is that shutdown. It's that I want to communicate. I just really cannot in that environment. It's really difficult. And I used to get a lot of comments around kind of, yeah, Ellie's the quiet one, not just from teachers, but from my peers as well. And then it kind of got to a point where when I did say something outside of my immediate friendship group, people would then comment and say, oh, Ellie said something, which then kind of highlighted that fact that I was different. So then it made it even harder. I really struggled with free time, kind of knowing what to do, knowing where people would be. My high school, we had 3 separate buildings, and they all kind of like linked via a path in the middle, and we used to call that the split. So we used to say, we'll meet you at the split. But then if I got there, my friends weren't there, I would then panic, go into panic mode. I remember always walking around with this kind of purpose and walking around really fast. And I think it was just to get out of the situation as quickly as possible. I'd often find myself in a toilet cubicle at lunchtime, and this was from primary school to university, because that was the only I felt safe there. I could lock the door. It was a nice small space. And yeah, I did spend some lunches in toilet cubicles on my own to avoid that sensory hell, and just to process everything as well. Something else I struggled with when I was younger is that kind of info dumping. So when I am really passionate about a topic, I love to teach other people, which again is where this has come from. And I will just talk you to death about it. And when I was in high school, a lot of my interests were not typical interests of a teenager. So things like I loved Jane Austen. I loved learning about history, particularly World War II. As a family, we went to the D-Day landing beaches a few times, and that was my all-time favourite holiday as a teenager. So yeah, my friends could not relate to my interests. Musicals played a big role for me. Loved musicals. I felt like music, I could just really connect with music, and it helped me feel calm. So yeah, again, musicals was huge for me. I really struggle with socialising outside of school. So a lot of my friends would meet up outside of school. They'd go to the park. They'd go out shopping. But I really struggled with public transport. I needed to know the exact plan. So what bus are we getting? I couldn't get the bus on my own. That was too much. If I remember once getting the bus with them, and I had to meet them at the bus stop, and they had to get on first so that I could see what they did. Like, how did they ask for the ticket? What ticket did they ask for? Where were they going to sit? So they modelled that to me without knowing that's why I asked them to go first. And yeah, I did have suicidal feelings in high school, college and university. I think there's that difference between kind of being suicidal and those suicidal feelings. So I didn't ever attempt anything. It never got that far, but I definitely had those feelings of what's the point? Why am I here? If I'm going to do it, how could I do it? But it never went any further than me just thinking about it. But even that was really difficult. I felt so alone. I think remembering when I was at this point in my life, autism, there was definitely a stigma. I think there still is a bit of a stigma, but there was a huge stigma around autism and what it was. Very much a boys kind of thing. So at this point in my life, I was kind of struggling to understand who I was. Is it autism? Is it social anxiety? Is it something else? Whilst being a teenager, which is a really difficult time anyway, it was, yeah, really, really tricky time of my life, definitely. Because I struggled so much throughout the day and was that overstimulated, I had a lot of shutdowns and meltdowns at home. So I can't remember what the meltdown was over, but I had a meltdown and my mum came to check I was okay. And I just sat in the corner of my room, and like a mum would, she came to comfort me, give me a hug, and I just had to scream at her, like, don't touch me. I could not be touched at that moment in time. That was too much sensory input. So she just kind of sat next to me, which is what I needed at that time. At high school is when I like to say my love-hate relationship with drama started. So I joined the drama club when I was in year 7. That's me on stage playing Bet from Oliver. If there's any musical Oliver fans out there. And I felt like drama, I could be somebody else. And that's what I loved. I could be given a script. I knew exactly what was happening, what I was going to say, what the other person was going to say, how we were going to respond. And I loved that structure. And I love getting away from my own life and getting to play somebody else, somebody who was confident, somebody who had the friends, somebody who fit in with those around them. And I think I was pretty good at it at the time. I don't think I could do it now. So my mum kind of encouraged me to pursue drama. So I did drama in college as well. Because it really helped my confidence. And my mum would say that every role, every kind of environment you find yourself in life, you will be acting a role out, you will be wearing that mask. And reflecting back on that now, so when she said this was before I realized I was autistic. My mum kind of, I think she realised when I was about 7, because that's when she started working within specialist education. So when I was in high school, I wasn't aware. And also my mum's autistic. So my mum was diagnosed a few years ago now. I can't remember exactly when, it's gone so fast with COVID. So she didn't realise that she was autistic at that point. So putting a mask on is something that she did. So she was teaching me to do it. And essentially that's what I was learning to do. I was learning to mask. And I think drama has really it really helped to solidify that mask and make it like a concrete mask. So it's been so difficult to chip away at that mask, to learn who I am and to show other people who I am, because it's something I've been masking my entire life. And I think that it's exhausting, it has a huge impact, but I'm going to come on to masking in a minute. This is where I get very, love talking about it, and I will just spiral. I hated role play. So love drama, love the script, loved what was happening, loved the structure. Role play I hated because I didn't have the script. I didn't know what was happening next. I didn't know what the person was going to say. I remember in college they would make us, they'd be like, right, we're going to do some role play, and I hated it. And I remember one time they gave us a hoop, like a hula hoop, you know, that you swizzle around on, not the crisp. And they just kind of said, right, there you go, role play. And it was so difficult. I really, really struggled. And I was watching these people stand up and just be able to do it. And I still remember this one girl, she put it round her, and she kind of pretended she was selling things in like a theatre, you know, like in the interval. And I was like, that's a great idea. And I just could not think of anything imaginative because it's a hoop. What else would I use it for? It's a hoop. And I just really, really struggled with that. Games like Wink Murder. So I do struggle with eye contact. I think that kind of struggling with eye contact, there's not liking to look at someone, and then there's in your head constantly being like, right, 1, 2, 3, 4, right, look away because you'll look weird if you carry on, right, now look back because you don't want to look weird because you're not looking. So I really struggle with that and just constantly had this monologue in my head. I would use avoidance strategies, so I would pretend to be ill to get out of doing things. I would go to the toilet. Anything to get out of those games. But that's a kind of tactic that I didn't just use for these games and drama. I've used kind of throughout my life, kind of telling those little white lies to get out of things. So then we come on to university, which was a very traumatic time. I have done a post about this on my Instagram. So the beginning, let's start with Freshers Week. I was full on convinced that a part of Freshers Week was going out to clubs. I thought that was mandatory because I was the first person in my family to go to uni. So my knowledge of what university was like was from TV. And on TV, they show what kind of the the average teenager might be excited to do when they go to university. And I was terrified. And I remember saying to my mum during the summer before I went, yeah, I don't think I can go to uni because I can't do that. can't go out and socialize, don't want to do it. So I remember having that chat with her because I was convinced. I wanted to quit so many times during uni. My course had lots of placements and I really, really struggled with placements. Not knowing where it would be, you'd often have to get a bus or train a bus. Not knowing the kind of the area. So I remember one of my placements was in a Blackpool way, and I had to get up at 5 a.m. and get like bus, train, bus, or something ridiculous like that. So to go through all of that before you even get to the destination, and then have to be around people all day, and as a student, you feel like you are being assessed constantly. So you cannot have a break, you cannot shut off. And I had one placement in particular, it was a peer placement, and the peer I was with was confident. And my clinical educator said to me, I don't know how you do what you do. At the time, I was a bank support worker with individuals who have learning disabilities, loved it. And that comment has stuck with me even today. Like I've brought it up now. It is really stuck with me, that comment. It was really difficult. And I think uni in general, you do a lot of group work, and they say that when you start your working life, you'll have to work with people, and that teamwork. So we did a lot of group work to practice that and working with different people, and it was so traumatic. It was really difficult. I understand why it has to be done, because you are developing those skills, but I think in real life you can make active decisions about who you work with. So I feel like where I work now, I am with the best team for me, the most supportive environment for me. And I got to choose that because I got to leave my previous job and found this environment and found this team that I work well with. But I get why we have to practice that. I do understand that, but it's just being mindful of how difficult it can be. Mental health. So I've already touched on some kind of things around mental health. This is something that I've added recently to this PowerPoint, and it came from seeing a post that my friend Hattie, I think you are here, Hat Talks posted about the kind of grieving process after diagnosis. And I responded to that post because it made me really think. I think my kind of grieving process was the other way around. So being autistic and realizing that I was autistic when I was 16, I remember being so upset, so upset about almost grieving the experiences, the life that I knew I would never have. And it was really difficult. I would be shut in my bedroom and crying on my own. I don't think my parents know about this, but essentially I was grieving that life that I would never have. Whereas kind of fast forward, post-diagnosis, for me, that diagnosis has validated my feelings. It's kind of given me the strength and the encouragement to seek out this community or the other neurodivergent people. For me, that kind of grieving process, that I put mental health because it's not really grieving, but it happened the other way for me. So I kind of grieved for the life I didn't think I was ever going to have, and now I feel in a better position. But I know that's different for different individuals, and I think that's something to say that I I am one face of autism. I am one autistic person. Everybody's experiences are completely different. Everybody's journeys are completely different as well. So I think it's important to listen to lots of different people to get a fuller picture. Never be a complete picture. Okay, so I've thrown in a bit of theory here. How are we doing for time? Oh, loads of time. Just because I think it's important to think about how we can use this theory to think about individuals that we work with, to think about ourselves and reflect on ourselves, and how we can support each other, really. So autism is a kind of neurological difference, and quite often people who are autistic or neurodivergent may struggle with things like executive functioning. So things like self-control, that kind of stopping and thinking before acting. This is something I do struggle with, particularly with shopping and spending money. I can't remember if I said at the start, but I am currently on a waiting list for an ADHD assessment as well. And there's so much crossover between autism and ADHD and executive functioning. And it's not until I kind of started following other autistic individuals on Instagram, is what I mainly use, that I started to think, oh, okay, so that could be ADHD. So I've gone and the GP kind of agreed and has referred me on to get an assessment. That's just an example of me going off topic. Self-control. So yeah, that kind of, for example, I saw these pins. I don't know if you can see them, Neurospicy, and my spoons are in the dishwasher. And just bought them. Like, but I see something, I buy it. It's not a great thing. My boyfriend often has to say, don't buy anything after 9 p.m. because I get kind of, I call it tired drunk. I don't know if anyone else experiences that, but where you're so tired, you kind of, you act a bit silly. So that's when I tend to spend. Emotional control, so reflecting on and managing feelings. I always thought I was good at that because of the drama experience that I had, that kind of having to analyze a character, analyze how they may be feeling at that time. But that was around a character, that wasn't around me. When it comes to me, I do struggle. Sometimes I get upset or I'm feeling something and I cannot pinpoint what I'm feeling or why. And I have to really kind of talk through that process again, often with my boyfriend, about what's happened, why I might be feeling the way I am, and kind of what I could do to help. We've then got task initiation, so the ability to start tasks. And I think a key one here as well is around ending tasks and not procrastinating. So examples for me around my kind of task management, I really struggle to do pots and housework. So they can build and build and build and build, and the whole work counter is filled with pots. But I just really, really struggle to initiate that task of washing the pots. Once I start it, I'm fine. It's absolutely fine. It's that initiating it. It's not that I don't know what to do first. I know, like, you need to just go over and turn the tap on and add a bit of soap, and it's something's holding me back. It's really weird. It's like you've got this barrier in front of you and you just can't get past it. At least that's how I experience it. And again, ending tasks. So I watched a TV series a few weeks ago. This is the most recent example I can think of. And it was Stacey Solomon's Sort Your Life Out. And it just put me in a clear out, chuck everything out mood. And I don't work Friday, so I'm off Friday to Sunday. And Friday to Sunday, I think I spent about 6-7 hours each of those days just clearing out the house with no breaks. And I only stopped when kind of like my boyfriend was like, it's like 10 o'clock at night. Do you want to do one more thing and then we'll go to bed? And he's really good at how he phrases things, because if he would have said like, right, you need to stop immediately, like I would have just been like, what? No, don't tell me what to do. I don't know if that's a bit of demand avoidance potentially, but the way he phrased it, I was like, right, okay, I'll pick one more thing. And yeah, he's right, it is bedtime. I've not had any breaks or kind of stopped to eat or drink. That kind of hyper focus that is really difficult. You feel very like you've achieved a lot sometimes in that time, but it's not healthy, not having breaks or food or drink. It looking after your kind of basic needs. It's not good. Self-monitoring again is another kind of executive function. So monitor and evaluate one's own behaviour and performance. I think I'm pretty good at this. I think just because of the amount of masking that I was doing. I was constantly analysing my own behaviour of, oh, okay, so just little things like my eyebrows didn't go up enough or something like that, and kind of adapting your own behaviour. If we move on to the other side, so we've got kind of that flexibility, so ability to manage change and revise plans. And I think this is one of the biggest, this is one of the ones that is talked about the most, I think, with autism, because it's something that you can sometimes see like an outward reaction to. Somebody could potentially respond to their plans being changed, and it does have a huge impact on the rest of the day, the rest of the week, the rest of the month. It just, yeah. I often go back and replay things in my head. That's part of my anxiety, and relive the moments. And I think when plans change, that tends to happen for me. I'll relive it. We've then got working memory, to hold and use information in our memory whilst working with the information. So one example of this for me is I take medication for anxiety, and my partner can tell when I've not taken my medication. He'll remind me and say, oh, do you need to take your meds? And I'll be like, yeah, I'll go take them now. And I'll walk down the stairs and just forget what I went for. I'll get distracted by something on the table, so then I'll clear that to the kitchen, and then I'll put that down because I've seen something else in the kitchen that is to do with the living room, and I end up like spiraling. And then he'll be like, oh, did you take your meds? And I'll be like, what? So yeah, I think it's hard. I did a post yesterday because I really had to remember to take a book for a client to a session, and I was like, I am going to forget this book. So I literally put it in front of the front door because I would have had to pick it up to open the front door. And I was like, that's the only way I'm going to remember that today. And it worked yesterday. Organisation, so ability to keep track of materials and information. Time management, so an understanding of how long things will take and using time wisely to complete tasks. Yeah, these are kind of the areas of executive functioning that people who are neurodivergent may experience differences or difficulties with. Trauma response. So I've already touched on trauma a bit, but I think it's really important to kind of recognise that a lot of people know about the fight, flight, freeze responses, but there are 3 other ones. So we've also got fawn, which is people pleaser, so to avoid conflict. And I'm definitely a fawner. That's something throughout my life. I've been a fawner. I have difficulty saying no. Again, in school reports, I was always the child who would, oh, she just gets on with it. And it's because I was fawning. I was in that constant fawn state. We've got freeze, which I guess, is that kind of shut down. So that dissociation, that kind of feeling that you're not inside your body, which I definitely experienced in university when we had to do presentations, and I just had to hope that what I said had made sense, because I could not remember any of it afterwards. And even when I was doing it, I'd sometimes have that thought of, oh, you're speaking right now, pay attention to what you're saying. And when you're in that freeze state, it can be so difficult to make decisions. So quite often, if I had to make a decision between two things, I would just not make the decision, because that was easier. We've got the flood response, so being flooded with that emotional response to perceived threat, which is, yeah, exhausting, it's difficult. I've got some examples a little bit later. We've got fatigue and flop, so not just feeling tired, it's pure exhaustion. So I used to provide input into schools, and one of them was at the end of the week, my school day, and I would, not every time, but more often than not, have to come home and just lock myself in the bedroom, curtains closed, dark space, and just, yeah, flop in bed to help me to regulate after being in that kind of overwhelming environment. So this leads quite nicely onto meltdowns versus shutdowns. So I like this picture of the kind of Coke bottle, because it's a visual representation of that kind of meltdown, of something builds and builds and builds. So if you shake a bottle of Coke, that pressure builds and builds and builds, and then eventually it's got nowhere else to go, but it's going to come out and explode. So quite often meltdowns, we can see a meltdown visually, we can visually see a meltdown. Whereas with shutdowns, it's very internalized to that individual. So you might see somebody go non-speaking. They might take longer to process things. It really impacts my processing time. And I just thought these were quite nice visuals to show those. It's not that you're being lazy or anything, like it says. It is, yeah, it's, your body is shutting down and can only manage what it can at that moment in time. So I've got some real life examples now. So this is a photo of me from 2 weeks ago. I shared it on my Instagram page, and this was following an experience at the gym. So the gym that I go to, my boyfriend can come with me 4 times in the month, and he gets like a code to come in with me. And the code wasn't working. So he ended up using mine, and he got locked in the gym. I got locked out of the gym. We had to call for assistance, and it just, that kind of, so we're both autistic, and I didn't clearly communicate that it's a QR code. It won't work because it changes every time. And he'd taken a screenshot of his because his internet doesn't work. So I didn't know it's a screenshot. So I was like, why isn't this working? But that kind of having to problem solve. It was a gym that I've not used before, so not familiar with the environment or the staff, and then having to call for help and be like, oh, we're going to get in trouble, that kind of conflict. I just, as soon as we were out of that situation, I started to cry a little bit, and I just said, I'm going to the toilet. So again, I still do it. I find toilet cubicle and just had to have a sit down and a bit of a kind of process what had happened and everything. I did then manage to get onto the treadmill. So I was stuck in this dilemma of, do I just go home or do I go on the treadmill? Because physical activity really helps me to regulate. So I did manage to go on the treadmill, and he tried to just touch my arm to be like, are you okay? And the only word that I could kind of say was, it was something like, no thanks, or don't touch me, because that was too much sensory input at that moment in time. But I am so lucky that he completely gets me, and he knows that I wasn't being rude or mean. I was advocating my need at that time, but they were the only words I could get out at that point to advocate for myself. Just thinking, I've got my notes, I'm trying to remember what else I was going to say. Yeah, as a band 5, I find myself in a really difficult position in that I just completed my newly NQP competencies, and I I found myself, the team went from, I think there was 4 or 5 of us to just me, providing the whole of the input in the college. And it was just firefighting. And I didn't find it the most supportive environment for me as an autistic individual. At that moment in time, I hadn't told anyone. They didn't know, because I didn't feel like I could tell people. And as soon as we got a new team lead who was absolutely amazing, my body just flopped and I ended up on long-term sick. And that was a really difficult time because I went to the GP, I ended up on antidepressants, being told to kind of do yoga, socialize, and reflecting now, it was burnout. I should have done the opposite of what I did to recover from that. I've touched on masking a little bit. So masking is essentially acting or wearing a mask to kind of hide who you truly are, because who you truly are doesn't fit with kind of society's expectations of who we should be. So it could be mimicking other people. So one of my speechy friends, I think she's here, may know I'm talking about her, does certain hand gestures, and I found myself copying these hand gestures when she spoke, and I didn't notice. Like, I knew I was doing it, but I didn't have control over doing it. And I mentioned it to her and she was oblivious, but the whole time I was doing it, I was like, she's gonna think I'm taking the mick out of her. But I didn't have control over doing it. It's just a way that I'd learned to mask over the years, to copy other people's body language, behavior, etc. So it happened without me realizing. But yeah, there's more for you to read on there. Yeah, hiding how you truly feel, suppressing emotions. So I already said I stim by playing with my ear, but in education, I would make a conscious effort. I'd like fold my arms because my hand would just go up and I'd be like, no, that looks weird. Fold your arms, don't mess with your ear, things like that. And the impact can be devastating. So that kind of missed or late diagnosis, that loss of self, that not knowing who you are, is really difficult. So for me, masking can often lead to autistic burnout. So burnout isn't just, oh, I'm a little bit tired. It is that kind of constant state of physical, mental, emotional, like every kind of fatigue, but it's that consistent state. There's no kind of like you wake up the next day and you feel a little bit better. It's always there. For me, it can look like extreme fatigue, increased meltdowns or shutdowns, increased anxiety, memory loss, feeling down, clumsiness, appetite changes. So I often struggle to eat, loss of skills, digestive issues. So I often get quite bloated and have a bit of a funny tummy, reduction of or slowing down of physical movements, difficulty concentrating, increased sensitivity to sensory input. And there's just some examples there of things that could cause burnout. But again, everybody's different, so it impacts everybody slightly differently. And talking about burnout and energy. So this pin arrived today. I ordered it. This is one of the pins I ordered this week. And I love it. It's my spoons are in the dishwasher. So spoon theory is that it was first kind of discussed by a lady who had kind of a chronic illness, and she was taking her meds during a meal with a friend, and the friend knew that she kind of had something going on but didn't know the specifics. So they asked her about it and she describes it. She was like, what do I have to describe it? She had spoons. So she grabbed spoons and she said, imagine that you have a limited number of spoons each day, and that represents energy. So if you have 12 spoons, that's the spoons for you that day. And different tasks throughout the day use up a different number of spoons. So if you want to have a shower, that's 3 spoons gone. If you have to drive to work, that's another 2 spoons. You have to be at work, that's 5, 6 spoons. It changes for everyone. And it's that idea that energy isn't unlimited. It's going to run out. we may end up borrowing spoons from tomorrow, but that just means we have less spoons tomorrow. So at some point it's going to catch up with us. So I think within the autistic community, we refer to people as spoonies a lot. And I think most autistic people, you can say, oh, I'm really sorry, I don't have the spoons today. And they know what you're talking about. It's great. But yeah, it's worth a read to go and read up on that a little bit more. It's interesting. It's a great way of thinking about it. And then I think this is finally a little bit about stimming. So I stim a lot. A lot of my masking has been hiding my stims. So stimming is any kind of stimming or self-stimming behavior. Could include like body movements. And for me, I'll kind of like rock a bit. Again, on my Instagram, I've shared some videos of kind of me stimming, so kind of that rocking. When I'm really excited, I'll jump up and down. I'm actually stimming now. I'm using my bobble, spinning my bobble on my wrist. And I feel like historically, in previous roles, I don't think stimming was fully understood. But actually, yes, it could be when somebody's anxious, but it's also for enjoyment as well. So I vocal stim a lot and I love singing, and I'm not very good. I'm not any good at it. I won't sing for you, but I enjoy doing it. And for me, that's that enjoyment of stimming, that vocal stimming. It increases sensory input, etc. So I've just got a couple of quick videos. I know we're running out of time. I've just got so much to say. So this is me during a virtual meeting with some of my fidgets, and they just really help me focus and remain calm and regulate. And you can see that I'm discreetly playing with my ear as well, kind of resting. I tend to bite my lips a lot too, which isn't a great one because I end up with really sore lips. Another one for me is staring into the distance. So I'll just kind of stare, and you know when your vision goes blurry, that's one that I do a lot of too. But yeah, everyone's stims are slightly different. Missed that one. So I just wanted to finish with some of the things that help me now, because it's definitely been a journey of self-discovery for me and kind of embracing who I am. And these are the things that I found help me. So that consistently routine, I use loop earplugs when I'm going to the shop or going to the gym or even just out for a walk. Sometimes the wind is too much auditory input for me, and I always have my earplugs with me. Sunglasses, I wear those a lot. My fidget toys, and feeling like I can stim. Periods of quiet, naps. I'm a huge napper. So quick story, when I first met my boyfriend and I'd stay over at his house, I became known in his family for, oh, Ellie's taking a nap. Ellie sleeps a lot. And reflecting back on it now, it was that trauma response loop of kind of that flop. I was exhausted from like masking and being in this new environment with people who I didn't really know. So yeah, exercise really helps. So I love aerial hoop at the minute, medication, having autistic role models. So it's not until I got my diagnosis that I really delved into and explored the autistic community online. And it's just been great. There's so many great autistic role models out there. Accepting there are different ways of making friends, so connecting with people online. There's a friend app that I've met some people on, and I don't like to say it because I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's HIKI. So I want to say hickey, but that sounds a bit rude. But it's a great app for neurodivergent people to make friends or relationships. It's really good. At work, I do have reasonable adjustments in place. Things like the option to email rather than phone, time to process change, receiving agendas before meetings. And I think for me, one of the big positives of COVID was that we all now embrace and accept working from home a lot more, and that virtual working. So those virtual team meetings, I so much prefer a virtual meeting to face-to-face. Yeah, again, there's more information on Instagram. And then this is the very last bit, I'm sorry. These are just some of the Instagram accounts that I follow that I just find either useful, or it's other neurodivergent individuals who are just really inspiring. And yeah, I just love their Instagram pages. They're really informative. Some of them kind of record videos, so it's kind of giving that information in a fun way as well, which I like. So yeah, that's it. Sorry, I tried to whiz through at the end there.
Don't apologise at all, Ellie. That was
I
amazing.
could
Thank
just
you
talk
so
about it all
much.
day.
It was brilliant. I think everyone will be going away with a mind full of things to consider and reflect on. I don't know if anyone's got any questions or any comments that they'd like to share with Ellie while we've got her. While we are having our discussion, I will also launch a little poll for today. It would be great if you could just quickly pop in your feedback on today's webinar and future webinars. We'd really appreciate it. So we've got a message, Ellie, from Laura. And she says, as an autistic woman, this is just so relatable and affirming. Having only recently realised this and then diagnosed at 26. Oh, sorry, lots of people commenting now. I still struggle a lot with mutism as an adult, also pursuing an ADHD assessment. Thanks for sharing.
Oh, it's lovely to hear, like, yeah, to share experiences and that feeling of you are not alone, because there was so many times growing up that I did, because there was that stigma around autism, that I felt alone and I questioned, is it autism? Because like nobody I know is having these same experiences, or yeah, so I think it's so important to share.
Definitely. We've got lots of thank yous coming in. Emily's saying thank you for today. Harriet too also wanted to ask if you have accessed therapy before, and if so, how accessible it was for you.
So I have never accessed therapy. The kind of the support network that I had, so both my parents worked within educational special education, so they received a lot of the kind of standard training around autism and support. So again, I think I've shared on my Instagram a post around university, and my mum would do trial runs with me for placements. I didn't mention that. So if I had a placement somewhere, we would get the exact bus that I'd have to get. Like, we'd wake up early to get it. So I knew kind of like who the bus driver might be, how busy the bus was, and would I get a seat and things like that. And a lot of kind of social stories and yeah, I think my family have been my therapy and support network. Yeah, I think I'd like to look into therapy. I think it would be interesting, because I just, yeah, could talk about it forever. But I've never accessed it before now.
Thank you.
But sorry, just thinking about the accessibility, I think one of the reasons I haven't is because of the accessibility, because it means I'd have to go and see someone I don't know face to face, or I need to pick up the phone and phone somebody to get that input. So I think that's a barrier, definitely.
Zoe would like to know, did you find it difficult getting a diagnosis later on in life?
No, I didn't. I think it helps the area that I work in, because I could go to the GP and be I stood my ground, and I was very much, look, this is what I'm experiencing. This is who I am. I work in this area. I know, but it was almost like you will refer me, rather than can you refer me? Because I think I got very nervous before that GP appointment, because I'd read a lot online about GPs dismissing it and being like, oh no, you can't be autistic because you make eye contact. But I don't know how, reflecting on that, I don't know whether they were based in the UK, or there's a lot of that in America. I think now I've read about that a lot more. So it was very nerve-wracking, but I think you know yourself, you are the expert in yourself. Yeah.
Just on that note, Ellie, since you were diagnosed, do you think, now that you're more involved within the community and sort of current research and topics of discussion, do you feel that times have moved on and GPs maybe are more understanding and receptive to people's sort of self-diagnosis and questions?
I think to an extent, yeah. I think it's difficult to answer that properly because I am very much submerged in the autistic community now. So that community is so supportive of one another and completely accept self-diagnosis as valid and everything. And I think because I've already gone through that journey myself and it was accepted, I might be a little bit biased. The most recent one of going to the GP for an ADHD referral, the GP's response, he sighed when I said, like, look, I'm autistic, I got a diagnosis and whenever it was, I think I may also have ADHD. And he just went, oh. I was like, what? And where I live, they no longer offer assessment for adult ADHD. So they've had to refer me privately. I think that may be why he was sighing rather than me saying that. But again, being autistic, and I still analyze that interaction of why did he sigh. But yeah, I think there's a lot more acceptance. I think we need to act on that acceptance now. So it's fair enough being like, oh yeah, we accept everyone for who they are, especially with all the like celebrities saying that the autistic celebrities kind of coming forwards and sharing their journeys and experiences. But there's a difference between that kind of acceptance and that kind of, I guess, true acceptance and kind of embracing it, to having the, making things more accessible and making it more, more accessible, I think, acting on it, that's the word I wanted, like acting on that acceptance and that knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Ellie. I know we're coming to sort of an end now. So just before we do go, we have got a range of other AT training sessions and free webinars coming up. We have a range of events booked in over the next couple of months. A lot of free resources available also on our on our YouTube channel and our Instagram accounts. We've got a lot of external training courses being advertised at the moment with some great partner organisations, Talking Mats, Makaton, Play Included. So please feel free to have a look at the Eventbrite page for AT Therapy to find out more. If you do have any other questions, please feel free to just give us an email at info@attherapy.co.uk. We've also got a really exciting webinar coming up next month, which will be delivered by one of our incredible team members, Amy Robertson, who's one of our education and therapy assistants. And she will be talking about how to develop communication in the classroom. Before we go, I just want to say thank you so much again, Ellie, for today's webinar. We've had loads of lovely thank yous and comments coming in at the end. Thank you for being so open and so honest. It was a brilliant session. I think as I said earlier, we will share this recording with everybody who signed up for today's webinar. And I think you're going to get a lot of response from people watching that back and also watching it on YouTube at a later date. So thank you so much again.
Well, thank you for letting me, giving me the space to do it. Thanks.
No, you are an incredible advocate for the autistic community, but also just neurodivergent women. I think you're a real role model. So I'm sure you'll have lots of contact from other people as well. Please feel free. Any emails that come into the info app, we will pass them over to Ellie if you just pop her name on the top of it. We're going to stop recording now.